Chapter 14. 7 hours later, Volonic and I were sitting in a ship even smaller than the escape pod. I was practically in Volonic's lap, something I didn't particularly enjoy. Volonic smelled a bit like orange soda. I'd never noticed that before, but I really could have gone my whole life without knowing anything about Volonic's odor. Convex icosahedron's plan was actually a pretty good one. It had an Empire Strikes Back feel to it. The service ships in and out of Planet Pleasant followed the sort of orderly, predetermined route favored by evil space empires, both real and fictional. The pod we sat in had been dropped near that route, and given an inertial push. Moving, as we were, without any sort of engine power, we looked like nothing more than space junk. If all went well, a supply ship would pass by us and we would magnetically attach to its hull, after which we could then get into the facility without anyone noticing us. The downside was that we had no chance of rescue, so if things went badly, I would be stuck, drifting with Volonic, forever. I still had no idea why he was coming with me. I understood that he was the only other being in the Renegade camp who was young enough to avoid whatever sort of sophisticated grown-up detector the Fads used, but that didn't make him an asset. I had tried to explain that. I'd made it clear that Volonic was not part of my team, just some cat guy I was stuck with, but Convex icosahedron said that the numbers showed Volonic needed to go with me, and evidently there was no arguing with that particular geometric upstart once he started talking about the numbers. The Renegades certainly prepared me for the trip. They gave us both fresh clothes, dull brown jumpsuits made for us to look like prisoners, but they had been treated with PPB-resistant armor. I liked that. They provided backpacks with food and moisture packets, and weapons, including injectors tailored to Phatic physiology, that would produce almost an instantaneous unconsciousness. It would be far better to proceed stealthily than to go in weapons blazing, so I knew these would come in handy. Finally, towards the end of Adjul Ip's briefing, Convex icosahedron re-entered the room. With a great ceremony, he held out a gloved hand to show me what looked like a little noose. It was a circle of silver rope, knotted at one end, with a long string dangling from where the rope closed. The whole thing was about as wide as a coffee cup in circumference. "What is that?" I asked.
"It is very old,"
Convex icosahedron said.
"Technology belonging to those you call the Formers. You may need to interrogate beings on your journey, and it will help to know if they speak the truth. This item is a piece of code given physical form, but it can be incorporated into your data bracelet. The Lariat of Veracity, as it is called, will alert you with a mild buzz whenever a being lies to you."
"The Lariat of Veracity?" I repeated. "You mean a lasso of truth? Like Wonder Woman's?"
"I could not say,"
Convex icosahedron responded thoughtfully. The colors began to shift more rapidly along its many-sided head.
"Perhaps."
"Why would the Formers make a lie detector in the shape of a lasso?" I demanded.
"Why would they make cockroaches?" he countered. "Why would they make kiwi fruit, which is delicious, but difficult to peel? Do you want something that will help you, or do you want to ponder the mysteries of the cosmos?"
I held out my arm. Convex icosahedron placed the Lariat of Veracity around my data bracelet, and I watched as it seemed to meld into the device. In a matter of seconds, it was gone, leaving no sign that it had ever been there.
"I am a very pretty flower,"
announced Convex icosahedron. I felt a mild buzz, slighter even than a cell phone vibrate, but still noticeable. "This could come in handy," I said.
"I have no doubt you will use it wisely,"
said Convex icosahedron. I waited for the buzz, but, surprisingly, he seemed to really believe what he'd said. After Adjul Ip's briefing and Convex icodysynchron's presentation of the cool gadget, I'd had a moment alone with Colonel Rage. I still hadn't forgiven him for betraying us back at the Hidden Fortress. I never would. I therefore put my most burning question to him. "What's the deal with Convex icosahedron?"
"Son, I wish I knew. I can't even figure out if he's a living thing or some kind of talking toaster. All I know is that these aliens seem to trust him, and they appear to be on the up and up, so I'm going along with them for now." I don't have any better options if I want to get those invaders off our planet.
But why does he want me to take Volonic along?
No clue about that one either. As near as I can tell, that alien is nothing but a liability. Either he's got a skill set none of us have seen yet, or convex icosahedron is keeping something from us. Based on what I've seen, I'm more inclined to think it's the second one. He's definitely playing his own game.
You think he's a bad guy? The colonel shook his head.
No. If I had to guess, I'd say he's not working with the fads, but I do think he may have his own agenda. Something other than which of these two civilizations comes out ahead. After all, we don't know who his people are or what they want. No one will tell me much about him or how he got to be their leader.
All of which meant I was headed into a very dangerous situation with a guy I couldn't count on because another guy I didn't much trust insisted on it. The only thing that gave me any comfort was the fact that there was no way Volonic and convex icosahedron could be possibly working together. I still don't know why you gave up on the plan to liberate Earth, I told him. He cocked his head, and his good eye narrowed with suspicion, like I was fishing for information. As it happens, I was. I hadn't forgotten that the Phatic Renegades had a portal opened to my planet, as well as a fully formed plan for freeing it. I wanted to know what they'd worked up in case I needed more options.
I didn't abandon it, the colonel said. Convex icosahedron did. As far as liberating Earth went, the plan was solid, but in terms of destabilizing the Phatic Empire, it was less of a sure thing. Apparently the Fads use a kind of faster-than-light technology to provide energy to their conquered worlds.
I nodded. The subspace energy relay. I saw it in Manhattan. He looked at me, maybe remembering I wasn't just some dumb kid.
The plan was to shut it down, deprive the Fads of their power source, cut them off from the Empire. They only have a few thousand soldiers on Earth, so without the technological advantage, human numbers could have taken care of the rest.
What's to keep them from just sending more ships? I asked.
The hope was that enough other planets would follow Earth's lead, and there would be too many uprisings to put down. A domino effect. The numerical projections looked pretty good, but then they came up with the idea for destroying that space station, and those looked even better.
Once we get Glee-Wixix back to Confederation Central, you won't need either of those plans, I told him, though I wished I were as confident as I sounded. We drifted for hours. Volonic spent the beginning part of the trip chatting endlessly until I finally pretended to fall asleep. He gave up talking after a while. Finally, we received a notification on my data bracelet that our ship was closing in. There was always the chance that it would see us for what we were, and if that happened, the odds were pretty good it would decide to fire weapons at us. Alternatively, we could be captured. Neither one of these possibilities appealed to me, and I was starting to think this mission had been a huge mistake. Since the moment in that meeting, I hadn't had another flicker from my HUD. I'd spent almost all of my time pretending to sleep, trying to coax my skill tree back to life, like John Carter wishing himself to Barsoom. But it clearly wasn't a matter of will. I began to worry that the flicker I'd seen had been nothing more than my imagination, or, less humiliatingly, but not less dispiriting, a momentary glitch in the system that had shut down entirely. If my HUD didn't come back to life, I had no idea what I was going to do when we got to Planet Pleasant. The good news was that the transport ship didn't seem to take notice of us. The pod behaved just as it was programmed to do. It moved in behind the ship and attached itself near the engine exhaust, where the plasma wake would make us invisible to any scans. Now it was time to get to work. Using the equipment Adjul Ip had given me, I set up an automated drill that began to cut a hole about 4 feet wide in our hull and then in the supply ship's. Our pod created an airtight seal between the two vessels, so that when we breached their hull, the Fads would not receive a structural integrity warning on their bridge, since there would have been no loss of atmosphere. Adjul Ip explained that any readings produced by our actions would look like normal hull stress, to be noted on their maintenance logs. We would be emerging into one of the cargo bays where no crew were generally assigned, but that meant we should be able to enter unseen, but I had my PPB pistol ready for an emergency. This operation took perhaps 15 minutes, Once we were through, I crawled into the cargo bay, saw that it was empty, and signaled Volonic to come through. I then activated the nanotech hull sealant we'd been given. It took about 30 seconds to create a new, equally strong hull plating over the hole. With that complete, I keyed my bracelet to disengage the pod. It fell away, leaving nothing behind except a few near-microscopic cameras. Once the pod detached, it would begin to disintegrate, leaving no sign of our entry. Unless someone walked in and saw us, we would remain completely undetected. We now had a whole other series of problems, though, such as not knowing where in the compound our friends were being held, and how we would get from this ship to that unknown location. I had a schematic of both the transport ship and the research facility uploaded to my bracelet, but unless I could crack into the computer system or interrogate a prisoner, I would be operating blind. Adjul Ip had provided me with some hacking tools, but there was still a strong chance any attempt to breach the computers would set off alarms. I used my bracelet to call up the cargo manifest that Adjul Ip had provided, and scrolled through the cargo. Volonic hovered over my shoulder, peering at the information.
Much of this is fairly ordinary, he noted. Food, bedding, toilet tissue, things of that nature. However, if there were equipment related to research on Temret and the others, we might be able to follow those shipments.
I stared at him. Volonic, that's actually a great idea.
You know I only want to help.
But this time you're actually helping. That's a huge step forward for you. I reviewed the manifest. It seemed like there were a few boxes that contained equipment related to reverse engineering nanites. These crates were, I discovered, quite large. It turned out to be fairly easy to open them, crawl inside, and close them again. Now, we had to hope that they wouldn't be opened immediately, since if some eager scientist wanted to peer inside at his new goodies, we'd be in major trouble. Once again, I was stuck in a cramped space with Volonic. We waited for what must have been at least 3 hours, until I felt a rumbling I recognized as a ship entering a planet's atmosphere. Using my bracelet, I projected a visual, so that I would have some idea what we were getting into. We came through the upper atmosphere and flew over a vast ocean, low enough that I could make out gigantic creatures. They looked like monstrous emerald green eels, twice as big as any whale, leaping out of the water, snapping their jaws at us, though we were thousands of feet above them. We then flew over a vast and uninhabited forest region. Finally, we approached what looked like a small city, almost totally uninhabited, made up of mostly squat rectangular buildings. It looked more like an industrial park on Earth than anything fantastically science-fictional. The structures were windowless, covered in a reflective coppery substance. Around the perimeter were dozens of towers, for defensive purposes, I assumed. There also seemed to be a rail system connecting different parts of the compound. The Planet Pleasant facility was depressingly huge. I had to hope we were right about our crate, and we ended up somewhere near where we needed to be. Otherwise, we were in big trouble. Once the ship came to a halt, we had to wait another 2 hours for anything to happen. We heard movement and dull voices outside, but our crate remained motionless. Finally, some sort of anti-gravity device lifted our container and began to move it. We were taken off the ship and set in a waiting area, from which we were eventually placed on a flat car of the train. From there, the transport itself took maybe 15 minutes, and we were set down in what, through the slats, appeared to be a lighted space, most likely the storage room of a lab. No one appeared to be around. I waited another half hour to be safe, and then signaled Volonic that it was time to move.